Welcome to the Hokie Hoops podcast. I'm your host, Pete B, and we've got the full crew here, Ed Williams, Mike McDaniel. How you guys feeling on a Friday?
Good, man. Excited for the weekend. Super Bowl weekend, big one for you, Pete. But
Yeah, man.
it should be a good weekend. We got basketball on Saturday and Super Bowl on Sunday.
Yep.
Yeah, a couple of games the last few nights. We're going to get into the men first. Last time we spoke, they were, what do we got here? 10 and 13? I don't know. Well, regardless, we beat UVA. We lost to SMU. We're 10 and 13 currently, right? So we got that 10th win that we were not so sure we'd get about 2 months ago, but we got there. We won in JPJ 75-74. Let's talk about that one first because we looked much better than UVA for 39 minutes, I want to say, in that game. What happened at the end of that game, Ed?
God, man, just couldn't make free throws down the stretch. It got really tight around like the under 4 timeout, and then coming out of that, Coach Young and the staff did an amazing job scheming open mismatches, particularly for Toby Lawal on, I believe it was Day Ames. 2 straight plays coming down, just ran a set that got Toby that mismatch, and he scored both times and felt really good about it from there on in. And then closing it out, going 1 of 7 from the free throw line, gave UVA a chance to steal that one. I thought the kid made it. I thought what was his name? Rhodey made that shot, but hey, we got out of JPJ with a win for the first time in quite some time. So
yeah, it's very hard to win there. I guess was the last time when Nikhil hit the 3? Was that what it was?
Kerry Blackshear put back in overtime.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, because we had a 13-point lead, Mike, with 6 minutes left, and then we had a 7-point lead with like a minute 8 left. I mean, it is crazy because we missed Young missed a free throw 1-1. Hammond missed a 1-1, and then we got called for the over the back. Like I thought that game was rock solid. Like there's no chance we can blow this, and we damn near did it.
I got to complain about the over the back call. I thought that was an outrageous whistle there. Like Lawal had the position. He went up and made the more athletic play, which is what he usually does. I thought the over the back call was outrageous, but it's neither here nor there. You know, Tech really did struggle to put the ball in the basket late in this game. I mean, just take the free throws aside. Tech went like 3 or 4 minutes without a field goal. And then you mentioned the Lawal buckets were huge, but like Tech did everything in their power on the offensive end for as well as they played for most of the game to keep UVA in it. And that's before we even talk about the free throw issues, you know, missing 7 of the last 8 at the line. That's a killer. It's going to leave a team in any game. There was a play where Lawal had the ball on the block and he was like kind of tied up in no man's land, and Mike Young chose not to call a timeout there, which I caught a little heat in our Sons of Saturday group chat for this, but I do think that Mike Young has a tendency of trying to have his young guys like figure it out a little bit. And I know it was not a popular take that I put in the group chat, but it really does feel like he's trying to let the guys play through adversity a little bit, because I think he thinks it's going to benefit them down the line. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't take a timeout there. Like, I think Mike Young absolutely should have called timeout there because Lawal was clearly tied up. But that ended up being a pretty big swing. It gave UVA another chance on the other end. Yeah, just it was tough at the end of the UVA game trying to close that thing out.
He said as much in the post-game presser. He said I should have called timeout there.
Yeah.
That's been a very popular take in the Sons of Saturday chats all year.
I mean, that's what he's always kind of done, though.
He doesn't call timeouts early in games. He saves them for the end. You only get 4. He's very selective with it. He always has been. He admitted he should have called one in that exact scenario Mike is describing in the post-game presser. But so we were lucky to get out of there with a win. But we'll get to SMU more in a second. But you saw with the SMU game, having those timeouts late gave the Hokies a Hail Mary chance. He had all those timeouts late in the game, gave them opportunities to set up full court presses and things that gave Virginia Tech a chance to steal one against SMU. So there's different schools of thought on timeout usage in college basketball. He values them at a really, really high level. I think he's right in that approach, but it's just wrong in this specific instance, and he admitted as much.
I thought in this game, you look at the final score, and I know Mike talked a little bit about the lulls in scoring. 75 points on a UVA team at JPJ. Like, that doesn't happen for us very often. We had 38 in the first half. Clearly, it's not quite the Tony Bennett UVA team here. They're really struggling. The pack line isn't as ferocious as it once was. And I was pretty pleased with the offensive output despite what happened at the end of the game. Toby had 17 and 5. Shoot had a career high, 18 points. That was his high for the year and for his college career. 5 boards for him as well. Just 7 turnovers in the game, which ended up being critical to our victory. 52% from 3 as a team. We did everything well until that last minute. Like we really did. I mean, I know, like I said, there's going to be runs for each team, but we just got to make the free throw. 61% from the line. The 2 misses by Poteet, I just like at the end were crazy, but we got the win, and getting a road win at UVA is fantastic. Mike, I just noticed that hat, by the way. I like that.
Yeah,
that
man.
Dewey hat.
yeah. One of my go-to spots there.
One of these days we'll have to get down there together, dude.
Yeah, for sure.
SMU, we lost 81-75. No Rodney Brown in this one. I think he was sick. This was tough because we were playing hard. Like, Ed, I thought the guys were really gutty in this one. SMU's a top 50 team. Like, we fought that whole game.
Yeah, I thought we played really good. And, it's amazing how much better we are 45 days, from than we were 45 days ago. I mean, it's truly amazing. Like, this team, and, people will be like, well, it's because we're not turning it over. Well, that's because they know what they're doing now. Like, when they turn to throw to somebody, he's actually there now. People know the offense. They know where they're supposed to be. They know their roles and responsibilities. That has helped cut down the turnovers, and that's made this team just so much better, particularly the offensive end. They've been pretty good on defense all year, but the offensive efficiency has gone up so much, and it gave us a chance to beat a good SMU team. I mean, that's a good SMU team with a pretty expensive roster. That came into Castle, and they're likely going to make the maybe, I don't know. I think they're like on the bubble, but they've got a good shot to make the NCAA tournament. And we gave them everything that they could handle in this one. We were just 1 or 2 players away from winning that game, and it's unfortunate. I thought we had a chance to steal one, but we don't really have a guy of the caliber of Boopie Miller or BJ Edwards is a really good player in high school. He wasn't that good the other night, but Chuck Harris had a really good game. We don't have that veteran guard presence to kind of help you close out a close one. And I think that was really the only difference, man. Like, I put the SMU game in the same category as the Pitt game and, maybe a couple others early in the year, where I think if we had that one more player, that one more guard, that Jaden Ivey Curry, that Heiser Miller, I think that's when we walk away with a win. But I came away from that not mad. Like, normally I'm like bummed when we lose, but I was like, man, we exceeded expectations in that one. We played a great basketball game.
It was punch for punch for about 35 minutes of that game, and we were rebounding well. Mike, I was impressed with the ball movement, despite not having one of our ball handlers in Rodney Brown. I thought Rec did a pretty good job. I thought Hammond was pretty good. What were your thoughts on just how we were bringing the ball up, taking care of the basketball?
Yeah, relatively low turnover game for as good of a defense as SMU is, and they give you a lot of trouble because of their size. We were texting about that in our group chat of 3 of us. I was really proud of how Virginia Tech rebounded here, right? Specifically, Elijah Petit and Toby Lawal, who, when they're on from a rebounding standpoint. When they're not, they're not. And this is a game where they absolutely had to attack the glass the way they did. Virginia Tech finishing +5 on the glass was pretty significant here, considering going into this game, you knew you were going to be at a size disadvantage, and especially in the backcourt with your wings. I think Virginia Tech did a really nice job taking care of the basketball here. This game took on a life of similar games we've seen this year, in that Virginia Tech looked like a team that was primed to hang around for a while. I think what was different here in this one versus some of the other close losses this year is that this SMU team is pretty good, and Virginia Tech hung around longer than I expected, right? Pete, I think you saying 34, 35 minutes being in this game. really when you're heading into the under 4 timeout, and I know at that point SMU had extended it out a little bit, but when you're heading towards that under 4 timeout, you still feel like you have a chance at a basketball game against a really good team at home. You got to feel good about it. And Ed, the point you made about this team being like leaps and bounds better and like cutting down turnovers and everything, the young guys are just starting to get it, right?
Yeah.
Like they're starting to gel. And what you saw earlier this year is a bunch of young guys with not a lot of experience playing college basketball. What it felt like was for the first time, and it really has been fun to watch how this team has continued to develop. Like even the guys who've been around college basketball a couple of years that haven't played a lot, like a Jaden Shoot. We just talked about his performance against UVA. Jaden Shoot plays well again here against SMU, obviously. It's just fun to see these young guys kind of start to develop, and the veterans like Elijah Petit put together consistently good games time and time again. It feels like Petit, even though he's been like a peaks and valleys player for his career at Virginia Tech, it does feel like there's been a bit more consistency lately, especially last couple games. So that's been encouraging to see as well.
I thought we got good games out of Poteet, Burnham, and Jaden Shoot in this one. And that's what we need if we're going to compete in some of these games at the end of the year. Poteet, 15 and 10. I mean, to me, with our roster and the construction, he should be a double-double every night. Like, I don't really understand how he's not at least closer to that than he is. And maybe he can be going forward, but Shoot is becoming the real deal, as you said, Mike. A dozen or more points in 5 of his last 7 games. He's had 15 plus in the last 3. His threes are dropping. He's 10 of 22 from in his last 22 threes. Good for a couple turnovers a game, but I think that should improve as he ages and gets more experience. In the SMU game, just to close that out, we could not hit threes as a team.
No.
I think Rexsteiner and Toby were 1 of 10 combined from 3, whereas Burnham and Shoot were 5 of 10. So maybe they should take a few more, but we needed guys to generate offense. I don't have a problem with a lot of those threes that Rexsteiner was taking, right, Ed?
No. Yeah, that guy can shoot the cover off the ball. That's the one thing about his game I have no issue with. Like, by all means, take those shots. And that they were just unfortunate. Now Toby's shooting 5 and making 0. I can do without that. It was. It's hard to nitpick Toby because he's been so good, but it was a bad Toby Lawal game. I think if he plays like an average game, we probably win.
He
not
couldn't
putting
pass.
it on him.
He was struggling with his passing in this
I'm
game.
not putting it on him by any stretch, but he got in foul trouble. I think it knocked him out of his rhythm a little bit. But yeah, man, if you look at our starting lineup, it's Toby Lawal, who has not played a lot of basketball, Elijah Poteet, adult, 2 true freshmen and two true freshmen and a redshirt sophomore. So these guys are all young, inexperienced, in a new system, and as the years gone on, they've gotten better and better and better.
I know Johnson, he didn't have, a stat line that really jumped out in the last couple games, but he is just the do-it-all glue guy, and he continues to be that. He dropped in and hit a jumper from the foul line in one of the games. I can't remember which one it was. And I was like, damn, that's a nice little play. And that's the stuff that you don't see freshmen doing so well sometimes. And so I wanted to just mention him again because we have to mention him every show.
I think the two of them both, though, like Johnson and Hammond have both gotten better at finding their shots. Mm-hmm. Like Ben Hammond putting the ball on the floor, going to the rack.
He did that a couple times, yeah.
He got blocked once, but he finished 3 of 6. We'll take that. I mean, he is such an effective player, man. He really is.
Johnson is like the wing version of Mutz, but he also has a little bit of Bibbs in his game too. I like it a lot. Like, yeah. I want to see this like 2 years from now. I want to see it.
Player.
Yeah.
I agree, Mike. The upside on Johnson is crazy. Higher than Bibbs, right? Like, I mean, that's where it's exciting.
I think so.
He's not going to probably be the shooter that Justin Bibbs was, but that combo that you just mentioned, it is kind of like right on point. I really like what you said there. Yeah. I also wanted to go to Mike Young's commentary, fellas, because he was on, was it ACC PM or something like that?
Yeah.
Talking about his career, his prospects in the wake of him getting to 400 wins, and with other ACC coaches calling it quits, saying they're going to retire, some already getting out of the game. He kind of indicated the opposite, right?
Yeah, he's a coach, man. I mean, he's a coach, and he keeps talking about, I'm having a lot of fun. when you're just a coach's coach and you're watching these guys grow the way they're growing right now, I'm sure that's fun. Does he love everything that's going on in college basketball? No, of course not. I don't think anybody does, but the nitty gritty X's and O's, development, all the stuff that these guys get into it to do, he's doing at a really high level right now. So I'm sure he's having fun watching Ben Hammond get better and Tyler Johnson get better, Jaden Shute get better. I think, he got 401, his 401st win against UVA, and I think there's more of those to come in a Virginia Tech uniform for Coach Young. I was happy to see those comments, and I think in general the fan base and the donors. I heard David Cunningham and Chris talk about this on the TSL podcast after the UVA win. What they've heard and things like that regarding NIL, and some serious frustration points from big time donors about how things took place last April and when the portal window opened. And I think this team will be better resourced in a way that gives Coach Young a chance to surround Lawal and Shute and Johnson and Hammond with complementary pieces and some big time players. And I don't know how he wouldn't be rejuvenated and excited based on what he's seen on the floor and some potential more financial support off the floor to supplement that.
Real quick, like this type of roster, this is what he does.
Yeah.
Like he's a player development coach. This is what he did for years and years and years at Wofford. It's what he's done even at Virginia Tech with better rosters than this one. But like at his core, when you look at this roster and how this team has grown this year, this is what he does. This is what he loves to do. His entire career, it's been doing more with less in terms of, not having a bunch of NBA talent on his roster. This is Mike Young, a Mike Young coach team to its core, right? And I think that doesn't mean he doesn't want better players. I'm not saying that. And I think that the NIL conversation will be a good one, and being able to, put a better roster together for him, I think will be really important. But this is the first team I've seen basically since the ACC title where like the pieces seem to fit. It's not a bunch of like disjointed, just like good pieces that don't fit together. You can just see a team that's playing together. Everybody knows their role. To be honest, guys, there have been more talented teams in this the last couple of years, but like it's been pretty apparent, like the team's been lacking this, the team's been lacking that. Like really, this team needs more of what it already has, just in like a better form, a more developed form. Like these guys know their roles in a way that like past Mike Young teams the last couple of years haven't. I think that's really important to highlight.
Yeah.
And having him say those comments and having the hope for that continuity with more NIL and this young core growing together, like we can make a leap next year if we can keep most of this team together. And that's exciting. And the turnaround, I mean, we've already said it multiple times, but like not just the team playing better, but the whole vibes around the program turning around because of the coaching job that's taken place is extremely exciting. Well said by both of you guys on that. I wanted to say in terms of where we stand in the ACC, we are 5-7, tied for 9th with FSU, Cal, and Georgia Tech. I'm thinking we're going to make the ACC tournament. It's looking likely if you just look at the odds. And I think someone broke that down on Twitter today, but there are 6 top 50 teams in the KenPom in the ACC. And I think if you guys had to like, our KenPom's like 157. It's just not going to be good based on what we did earlier in the year and the schedule we have to play out. But like, I really feel that we're playing more like a top 80 team. If you look at where FSU is, they're 80 in the KenPom, and we went down there and we beat them. So like, is that kind of where you think we're at? Like, do you think we're a top 100 team with the way we're playing right now?
Yeah, yeah. You can take your beep boop stats and put them somewhere else. I'm not interested in that. I don't know how KenPom or whatever acronym you want to throw on it has this team at 160 is crazy. After the last month of basketball, that's crazy. That's not adjusting for anything that's taken place recently. That's just clearly those computer models are just going to have them where they are and whatever. But yeah, I don't think there's any world where this team is outside the top. Even 110, there's no world where that's the case.
UVA is 110, by the way.
Yeah, and we just beat them at their building. So
our next games, Mike, is at Notre Dame and then UVA at home on the 15th. If we win both of those, we'd be 500 in ACC play. Do you think we got a good shot at that?
Mike Young, coach of the year now. Yeah, I mean, I do, right? Like Notre Dame's struggling under Shrewsbury, and they're still trying to find their footing. The roster's improved there, but I think Virginia Tech has a very good chance. It's always tough to go up to South Bend, but like with the way things have gone this year for Notre Dame, they're not quite as good as I think they thought they would be. So should be an interesting crowd as we sit here recording Friday for that Saturday afternoon game. I think Virginia Tech has a chance to win there, and then going. Having UVA come to Castle and seeing how this game just went, where Virginia Tech was decidedly the better team for a majority of the game, make your free throws, you win this game by double digits or close to it, right? Those are two very winnable games. And then to travel to BC, it's kind of been a little bit of a house of horrors for the Hokies, but like you find a way to win 2 out of the next 3, right? Get yourself back to level ground in the ACC and kind of be in that conversation of like 8th or 9th best team in the conference. Guys, we would have taken that after losing to Jacksonville earlier this year. I mean, we were sitting here on this podcast talking about the dire state of the program. Like, this is fine. This is okay. Like, given the roster that's in place and seeing the development to even be in the conversation to make the conference tournament, I think where this team was earlier this year, we will absolutely take it.
What you mentioned BC. Did you see what they did to Florida State the other night? They hit 2 threes with like 8 seconds left or something, right?
The turnover, the turnover to set up that final 3 was absolutely heinous. I mean, you toss it in the backcourt, absolute no man's land on the pass. I mean, you get what you deserve there. But
I'm hoping that is like the House of Horrors. It already got out of the way, and so when we go up there, it's not so bad. One last comment on the ACC. NC State, 2-9 in league play right now, only ahead of Miami, almost looking like a certainty to miss the ACC tournament because we have the tiebreaker over them, and they were in the Final Four last year. Like, this is a disaster.
Yeah, that ACC title win is going to cost that athletic department a lot of money.
Yeah. That subsequent Final Four run too with the extension and okay.
All right, rough. Let's move on to the women. They are 15-7, or sorry, I didn't have updated after last night because I was taking notes last night. 15-8 after losing to Syracuse at home, but we did beat SMU. No Rose Michal last night. Do you guys want to talk about Syracuse first or SMU first?
I mean, SMU, there's not a whole lot to talk about. It was a home game against a team that's not that great, and we struggled for a little bit, but we're able to, pull away and win that one by 8. That was a good win, just kind of a do your job win. And they took care of business. But yeah, last night against Syracuse, not having Rose, I think was really problematic, but I don't even know that was the real issue. We just could not guard last night against a not very good Syracuse team, gave up 93 at home. I mean, that can't happen. You're not going to win a lot of games that way. Carly and Karis did their best to keep us in it. Carly was fantastic, and Karis quietly had like 24 or something like that. They both have kind of been the cornerstones of this team, this steady hands, if you will. But not having Rose, I think, was a problem. But in reality, it was just we could not guard Syracuse. And you cannot give up 93 and win.
And I'm just going to get this take off real quick before I have to jump for work-related reasons. For Virginia Tech to finish this game plus 14 on the glass and then to guard as poorly as they did, I mean, that's a really tough pill to swallow. These are types of games where you miss, obviously, not having Rose Michaud, not having Samaya Safran, like people who have been kind of in the mix, right? You're seeing in games like this, the youth really comes to pass. I hate like passing every loss off to, they're young. They're, because we talked about that with the men's side all year. We've talked about some of the losses for the women, but like, it wasn't a very mature performance last night, right? Just, it's a home game. You're at Castle against a Syracuse team that's not very good, right? I mean, call it what it is. They're not very good. This is a game you should win. And to have that kind of lackadaisical performance defensively and not really be locked in for as well as Carly Wenzel played and for as well as Karis Baker played, like, this is where you see kind of the immaturity and the youth on the roster in losses like this, right? And we've seen it this year. This is a really tough one for Tech's NCAA tournament hopes, right? Like, you really got to buckle down the stretch.
I was surprised when I looked at the bracketology for the ladies that we were so close to being out, and then we lost the Syracuse game. And I know it's early, but nevertheless, right now, if this tournament was today, like we wouldn't be in.
Right. And this is a loss you can look to if Tech finishes the year on the bubble, and you're going to be like, we decided not to guard a 9 and 12, 8 and 13 Syracuse team.
I mean, Burroughs was going nuts. To be fair,
Insane.
She was hitting what 8 threes. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, she was ridiculous. But yeah, tough pill to swallow. So I just wanted to get that take off before I jump.
If you got to jump, feel free. Thanks, Mike.
Later.
We'll take it from here.
See you, man.
Later.
Carly in that third quarter, Ed.
She was awesome.
11 points and like 4 assists or something like that in one quarter? She was unbelievable, like single-handedly dragging us back into the game.
Yeah, she kept us in it all night and going to the rim too, like going to the rim, cutting through traffic, finishing with both hands. She was really good. I mean, there's nothing else to say about her last night and her all year. Carly's been amazing all year. And then Karis also just, steady and has really come into her own in this new role in the particularly the last like 2 or so weeks. But yeah, those two were great. But other than that, man, just could not guard. And, you can't give up 93 to a team that's not that good. That's going to come back to bite them when it comes down to Selection Sunday. They're going to have to go steal a couple now to climb their way back into the bubble, I think.
The frustrating part about some of the threes that Syracuse was hitting, because they were 57% from 3 in the game, was the Syracuse Orange, was that we had hands and faces on some of them. I know the guarding wasn't great all night, but like some of those were well contested and they went in anyway. Lonnie White had 20 in this one. She kind of had a bounce back after a 3-game, I'll call it a skid because she was in single digits in points, but like she has been pretty dang good over the last like 10 games. And like Mike said, there's maybe the maturity caught up with us a little bit in this one, just maybe not ready and focused. I'm not exactly sure, but this team is young and you're going to have nights like this, but with Baker and White. And I mean, we should get Rose back. I don't know. Do you know what the issue was last night?
I don't know.
I thought I saw her sitting behind the bench.
It doesn't sound long-term though. I think she'll probably be back pretty soon.
Ramaya got in there in her place. We had Kale starting the game, I believe, for her. But we even Rose herself isn't a big. She's not a Kitley. I mean, and no one is. I just mean it pure height wise. We don't have that presence unless we go to one of the freshmen in White or Hazelton, which she hasn't been really getting on the court because of her being in year one. But yeah, it's going to be interesting how this team matures, because that's what I'm going to attribute a lot of what happened last night to just being young. Despite the fact that I didn't even realize how young Carly was because she plays so well, but like she's still really young.
Yeah, she's a redshirt sophomore.
Sophomore, yeah.
Yeah, they gotta go steal one now, and they have Virginia next too on Sunday. So, they go exact some revenge. Go exact some revenge on the road and win at JPJ. Which last time we were in JPJ, it didn't go well for the women. So hopefully we can get some revenge out of that.
I mean, we need to, because we shouldn't have lost to UVA at home earlier in this year. And they've got UNC. I mean, sorry, we've got the Virginia Tech women have UNC number 13 on the 13th. So that's a really tough game coming up, and that's on the road. So if you don't beat UVA, you're staring down the barrel of a 3-game losing streak. And so it's a very important game.
Yeah, the Syracuse game was kind of the hiccup. You can't have any more now. So
exactly. I'm not sure if you have any final. I'm trying to look at what I have here written down.
No, Carly just one more thing, and it was on the listening to TSL and David and Chris, and they were talking about what they've heard about NIL and stuff like that for the program. I think it was David, and I'm not contradicting their reporting or anything. They are way more well connected, boots on the ground than me. But David made a comment, and I'd be curious to hear his further clarification on it, along the lines of like, we won't lose people because of money. I don't know that I maybe agree with that, because I don't know that we are ever going to be in tier 1, tier 2 college basketball money. I think, will we have the opportunity to keep anyone we want? Probably, but that doesn't mean we will elect to do so. There's going to be programs in college basketball that don't care about football. And when it comes to rev share, they are going to skew towards basketball. I think of the UNCs, I think of the Marylands, I think of Kansas.
The entire Big East.
Programs like that don't have the football burden or don't care as much about it. Like if we allocate, say, 15 to football and 3 to basketball, well, there's going to be programs who are doing 13 to football and 5 to basketball. So that extra $2 million allows you to maybe overpay guys outside of maybe even their value. I mean, who knows what perceived value will look like this portal window? I know from 2 years ago to last year, that jump really took place and guys were making a lot more money than they were the window before. Who knows if that happens again? But we have guys on our roster now who have developed into players that other really big programs will like. I mean, everyone's going to assume, obviously Toby and, Tyler Johnson, Jaden Schutz come on. Will we have the opportunity to pay them? Absolutely. But there might be instances where somebody comes in and just completely blows the top off and overpays for somebody. I don't know that we are in that category where we can afford to just match an over the top offer. I don't want it to sound like I think guys are leaving. I don't. It seems like everybody's really happy. They'll have the opportunity to make a bunch of money. And the program is in a much better place than a year ago, and that's great. But I did just want to clarify, there are programs that can and will go out of their way to pay someone 2x what they might be worth. And we are not in a place where we'll be able to match those offers. Neither are we in football. You saw it with, Chaplin and Delane leave, making a ton of money, and good for them. But Virginia Tech as a whole is just not going to be in a class where we can afford to overpay for somebody, even if we wanted to.
And I also think if we do let guys walk, so to speak, for more money and don't choose to match, we have better information than anyone else on the outside. So there may be a reason that we're letting them walk, or maybe we just straight up got outbid. It's going to be hard to say, but will we be more on the Moneyball side of college basketball? Probably, yeah. But we also have a distinct advantage in Coach Young being in Blacksburg. And I don't know, it's still the ACC. I know it hasn't been a great conference, but like we're going to be able to be competitive with the money set aside. And I don't know.
I don't want to sound like I'm alluding. Like I haven't heard anything where I haven't heard anything that anyone's like not at all. I was just more saying, like, if we have a player on our roster who we are offering X and 5 other teams are offering somewhere in that same range, but then Kansas comes in and offers 2.5 times that, you kind of have to throw up your hands. That's all. That's my only point. That's my only point.
Think there's a couple things on our side too, is that the Kansases of the world, the UNCs of the world, they'll go out and poach a guy here or there, but they also need to pay all the high school kids that they're bringing in, the top 10 high school kids. The developmental programs will still be able to develop because of that type of thing. And it's just, you need to make sure that if you value a guy and think he has the upside or maybe a little bit of an underrated upside, prioritize him rather than prioritizing the guy that might be a bag chaser. You know what I'm saying?
Well, we lost guys last year who market value wise probably didn't get overpaid too much relative to their peers. Like Sean Padula, he was a really good point guard to enter the portal, and he got paid accordingly. You can argue about the others. I'm not going to get into all that, but I do think, to David's point, that's where we'll be able to match and retain, is when guys are getting paid their market value. My only caveat to that is we're not going to go double up someone's market value to keep them. We're not in a position to do that, no matter how well financially situated we were. We're not, I thought it was pretty funny at the end of that game as SMU was pulling away. They kept panning to the SMU fans.
Yeah, what the hell was that about?
Well, it was like all their donors who flew on the private jet to the game. So it's like, we don't have that, guys. So that's my only point, is like, there are some people out there at some schools willing to do some crazy things, like fly to Blacksburg for a 9 o'clock tip on a Wednesday night.
SMU is a rare exception, though, right? Like I don't know. I mean, it's funny because they're old oil money at heart, but they're kind of new money because they're in
They're
this
just
new
money.
conference.
They're
Yeah,
just money.
they're just money.
That's my point. Is there's programs that have a different level of cash, and I think we are in a really, we're in a much better position, and our staff has done such a good job over the years of identifying talent, overlooked talent. Um, Keve Aluma, Grant Basili, Toby Lawal, the list, Hunter Couture, the list goes on and on and on. So I'm not worried, and I think that they will be armed in a way that they can pick their spots. But they're also not going to. They're not going to 2.5 times
No.
somebody's real value.
It's important to just bring back more continuity
Yeah.
for the men and the women, because you look at both of these teams, they're so young. If you can keep together 80% of the key players on this roster for the men, like next year could be really special, because dealing with all of the turnover this past year in particular, you just saw how bad we were at the beginning of the year. If we can avoid that and start with the ground running with some continuity, which I think we will, it could be such a special year for both the men and the women next season.
Yeah, I went through a little exercise where I kind of wrote out, me and Chris Arvin from 24/7 were texting, and we both kind of wrote out what we think, or I wrote out what I think each guy we want to keep could make on the open market based on rumors I've heard prior, player comps and things like that. And Chris brought up a good point. He said, you're basing that off of what the market was last year. We don't know what it's going to look like this year. It could explode again. So comparing, player X to what player Y made last portal window, the whole market could be different now. We don't know.
Yep.
We won't know till April. So, um, all that to say, Virginia Tech's in a much better spot, like Chris and David talked about. I just don't think they're in a spot where they're going to go compete with the Dukes and the Kansases and the Marylands of the world, who are basketball heavy and they care about basketball and they're willing to overpay as a result.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole couple of conferences that don't even play D1 football, and
Right.
that are like, the Big East doesn't play football anymore. Like
But
those
even just that distinction between 15-3 and 13-5, that $2 million spread over 6 guys is a lot of money. So
it is. But you also have to spend that money right. We saw Miami spend a ton in the portal, and they're a disaster. So the portal is it's a very volatile place. And that's why developing and the young guys we have on hand, you want to keep everything together.
And the eye for talent. You still have to have the eye for talent.
Yep.
And that's something Coach Young's always had. So I feel really good about the situation. I hope we are able to get to that, 8-12 type mark in the ACC. It's been awesome to see the support for Coach Young and the staff on the message boards, on the timeline, and people realizing what a good coaching job this has really been. It's been cool to see Virginia Tech fans open their eyes to that, and I think we'll see more of it down the stretch. And just really excited about this group and watching them come along. It's been a lot of fun as a fan.
It's definitely hitting home with the fan base. Like the Mike Young thing, it's turned a corner. People are realizing the financials behind everything, and we're competing despite being maybe a little undermanned and under-talented. And it's nice to see that. I've been, I'm online way too much, that. And
especially when we're trying to hire coordinators.
Exactly. But I've been seeing it on the timeline and in the socials and on the group chats that just like people are realizing it, and it is nice. So anyway, that's going to do it for the Hokie Hoops podcast. Make sure you're subscribed to the Sons of Saturday feed. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. We're trying to get our YouTube presence up. We've been doing well in football. We want to make sure you guys are tuning into the Hokie Hoops podcast as well. We'll be here for the rest of the season and beyond. So make sure you're subscribed. And until next time, go Hokies.